Okay, listen, Napoleon is out. Ridley Scott is incredibly grumpy about it. Matt Rife has a new comedy special, and let's just say it is not good. Hollywood's award season is back in full swing now that the strike is over. It's the end of the week group chat, and we have a lot to talk about, so let's go. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Okay, Hollywood is back in full swing. We can say we are so back. And you guys, I gotta tell you, Ridley Scott is not gonna be stopped. Okay, his new film, Napoleon, is out in theaters. He says he made this epic war movie in 61 days. But maybe more than that, he's really not holding back at all in these press interviews. I'm excited to talk about that. I'm excited to talk about some of the other big stories this week. Rad Simon Pillay is here. Sarah Ty Black is here. Hannah Flint is here. Hey, everybody. What's good? How's it going? I'm so happy that you're here.
Hi.
Hello. A lot of chaotic topics to get into, but we're going to start with Ridley Scott. Okay, so the new movie, Napoleon, came out in theaters on Wednesday. Stars Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby. Take a listen to this.
Everyone around is
What is this costume you have on?
This is my uniform.
everyone so near.
I led the French victory at Toulon.
What is your name?
Napoleon.
As the course of my life just changed. Napoleon.
I love that we left the mics up as we were playing that trailer and Sarah Ty just in the background giggling. We're going to talk about this, Sarah. We're going to come to you in just a moment. Rad, I'm going to start with you. Ridley is known for directing all these expansive, ambitious historical period pieces. We know him for Gladiator. You know, he's also known for making a lot of hits and a lot of misses. What did you think of Napoleon?
I mean, I really, really enjoyed Napoleon. I hope Sarah Ty's giggling was like giggling with the film as opposed to at the film. I don't get you. But I listen. Okay, well, I think like the film is intentionally funny in terms of the performances that Joaquin Phoenix is giving, in terms of what Ridley Scott's doing with that performance against the story. I was especially taken by the marriage story here. Like a large part of this movie is about this kind of delicious but toxic relationship between Napoleon and his wife Josephine. And you know, like, and parts of it kind of reminded me of like kind of a Looney Tunes take on Phantom Thread, where it's like, you know, the way they keep each other on their toes, the way Josephine tries to seize power within this patriarchal structure, and the way she gets this egotistical tyrant to eat out of his hands. But also, it's a really sad love story in the end. I mean, it is a tragic story, but I love that they try to make it a darkly funny comedy. I love Joaquin Phoenix, as I said, his performance. I love that he's playing up the idea of Napoleon being this tiny guy with a big ego. I think the idea of him compensating for size, him and Ridley Scott make that play out in terms of how he handles the battlefield as well as the battle within the bedroom.
Sure.
Like, I think that insecurity becomes a big part of this performance. So I just can't wait for now the 4-hour version of this movie, because I'm sure, as you know, like this is what, like, as you know, Ridley Scott movie, this one is 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Usually Ridley Scott movies, they end up better on the second time around, you know, the second try. The director's cuts, like Blade Runner, you know,
Yes.
was originally a flop. It was a huge hit when the director's cut came out. Similarly, more similar to this is Kingdom of Heaven. I don't know if you guys remember, or the Orlando Bloom Crusades movie in 2005.
Yeah.
2.5-hour movie comes out in theaters. It is awful. Everyone pans it, but then a 3.5 hour cut comes out on Blu-ray, and it's like greatness. Like, they literally removed the entire emotional storyline out of that movie when they put it in theaters. And so I'm hoping for whatever Napoleon is, when it spreads its wings, it just becomes greater.
I tell you, I'm not checking for a director's cut of Napoleon. I'll tell you that right now, bro. Hannah, where are you at with Napoleon?
I found it to be the comedy of the year, especially for fans of Pride and Prejudice 2005, because I don't know if I've ever seen this before so brazen in a film, where someone has lifted the score from another film and put it in this. There's a moment where this Pride and Prejudice, I think it's at Dawn, the score, and I heard it and I was like, excuse me, wow, you're taking me back to 2005 with Matthew McFadden like walking across the meadow to try to get Elizabeth Bennet. And I was like, that is wild. There were so many needle drops of classical music in this. But I think Ridley Scott has always been quite a funny person, certainly in his later career. Like House of Gucci and Last Duel are quite funny. And
Yes.
I like the way that the comedy is like kind of punching up in a sense of, you know, the character study of who Napoleon is. Comes across as quite temperamental, quite childish, entitled kind of guy who's clearly got both a superiority complex, but an inferiority complex, which I don't know if they quite grapple in here because he's Corsican. And there's a whole thing about Corsica and France and that kind of like I don't know, that weirdness, like, I don't know, problematic nature there that I don't think it really captures. I also feel that the sort of convention of biopics is often to like throw in a love story and pin it on that. And from my understanding, the love story wasn't quite there between Josephine and Napoleon. Like he didn't leave Egypt to go back to her. He left because he actually there was a massacre that went on and like he went back and he lost. So like there's a lot of things that like it picks and chooses what it wants to do it on. And I found that that central narrative is like, okay, but I suppose this thing about historical accuracy is fact versus fiction. I think if the truth is portrayed, and certainly I think they maybe of what our common understanding of who Napoleon was, certainly the truth of his character. Yeah. I definitely think it articulated that very well and hilariously well.
Well, it is more funny that he left Egypt because someone was sleeping in his bed.
But hold on though, because like the I guess like as big as Napoleon has been, I feel like what has been bigger is a Napoleon press tour, and particularly like Ridley Scott in this press tour. Sarah Ty, he's been making so many headlines for every interview that he does. You know, the critics come to him and go like, hey, this movie is very anti-French. It's rewriting history to the point that Hannah just made. And Ridley goes, the French don't even like themselves. That's a direct quote from Ridley Scott. What do you make of this? Of the way that he's trying to be like, oh, I actually don't care that much about historical accuracy. I made a movie.
I mean, I love that for him. And more than that, I love that for myself. I think I love angry old men who are like screaming at the sun, much like I love Paul Schrader. But the difference between Paul Schrader and Ridley is that I'm not at all invested in his movies, so I can truly just enjoy it. I think that someone who gave up reading biographies about Napoleon, like 2 in, and then made his screenwriter read the rest, I don't think that's someone that we can count on for kind of cultural or even historical accuracy. I don't think someone who says, excuse me, mate, were you there? No? Well, then shut the F up is someone we should trust.
Also a direct quote, yes.
Also a direct quote. Another direct quote. How did the Egyptians build the pyramids? F off. Another direct quote. We're all completely effed. We're back to candles and matches. Do you have candles and matches? I do, because I live in France. Another direct quote. Can you hang from that roof for 2 hours by your left leg? No, a baboon can. Like, I love watching someone just spiral out, especially a Sagittarius. I love that he's showing up with his printed review from Pauline Kael of Blade Runner that she notoriously panned as a kind of like gotcha, but it's really just like sinking him even deeper. Like, I love to see it. This is my favorite part of the class war, personally.
I'm on board with that. I'm actually absolutely on board with that. We should say, Rad, the man is 85. You know, like my personal favorite was when people are asking him if he thinks that his time is running out. And, you know, like Scorsese has talked about it in his press run for Killers of the Flower Moon. And Ridley goes, look, I've made 4 movies in the time that Scorsese made Killers of the Flower Moon, which he did. He made that Getty movie, and he made The Last Duel, and he made House of Gucci, which is like, I don't know if he should have made that. But Rad, what are your thoughts on Ridley Scott in this moment in his career?
I mean, look, I have a lot of love and affection for Ridley Scott, even if I don't actually, if I enjoy like less than a third of his movies, right? Like, I just think like, I mean, look, like, I think the fact that this guy is at this age making up to 2 movies a year. You know, he's turning 86 like next week. Yes. Okay, so like that is just impressive.
And he's making Gladiator 2 right now.
I mean, yeah, actually, Eli Glasner last night made this funny joke. In the time that we've been talking, he probably finished Gladiator 2. Right? So it's like, you know, like for a workhorse like that, who still comes out with elegant productions, I have nothing but respect. I have nothing but respect for in the way that Sarah described, like an old like cantankerous filmmaker who doesn't care how social media perceives what he has to say. Like he, like I don't think he's being grumpy. I think he's just, having a general conversation and being flippant, and he's not cognizant that social media is going to take the little sound bites and the kind of the spiciest things he says and make it go viral. It's kind of like Scorsese a couple weeks ago said, they keep saying my TikToks go viral and I don't know what that means. Right? Like he's having
Don't see a doctor? Yeah.
Exactly. So he's having a conversation with himself. So for the most part, I am enjoying this just as much, and I don't lose any respect for them, with exceptions, because when you're talking about this historical accuracy thing, I think there have been some problematic issues in the past, and I think I'm going to let Hannah speak to that.
Hannah, do you want to speak to that?
Oh, yeah. And it's so funny that you mentioned Gladiator 2, because one of the big things that I, talking about listening to historical consultants, there's a whole bit in it where, the bit where Maximus gets these Arab slavers, and then I think it's Proximo, he buys it.
Yeah.
He had Harvard's Kathleen Coleman as a historical consultant, and she told them, I'm pretty sure Arab slavers didn't operate in that region at the time.
Yeah.
But and then it went out, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't approve that. I would never have accepted that." So when you're putting historical accuracies that perpetuates an already negative representation, in this case of Arabs who have been maligned for 100 years of cinema, and kind of plays out into what's going on today, I do think you have a certain responsibility to historical fact. And also, I interviewed Ridley Scott 2018 for The Terror. And this is what he said to me. He said, what we do with entertainment, which is pictures and words, is a lot more powerful as an educational device than some kid expected to sit down and read a book to learn it. So I'm all good for those spicy comments, Ridley. But I've got the receipts. You can't be saying get alive to historians when you've said that what you're making is to help educate people. If you're distorting that to a certain extent, and then telling them don't read books, then I don't know. I just feel like you're a bit of a hypocrite. But do what you're going to do.
A man who looked around in the year 2023 and said, "You know what the people need? An epic romance about Napoleon. I can't wait for his epic romance about Columbus. I can't wait for more of them. Let's just go right to the romance. None of the killing, none of the colonizing. Let's get to the heart."
I just would like to channel Ridley Scott if he was sitting around this table and tell you all to F off, because he does not care. He's completely and totally over this. Okay, I want to move on to the next topic, because we got to talk about the fact that Ridley Scott is not the only one doing this press tour really hard right now. The strike is over. Hollywood is kind of back in business. I want to talk about what that looks like. Rad, what are you noticing right now as you kind of look around you in terms of all the movies that are rushing to promote, their actors maybe for award season?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, as soon as the strike was up, it felt like phones were off the hook. Everyone's ringing you up. All the emails are coming. Me personally, I was immediately in touch with Aman Vellani's people, the star of the Marvels, because we were picking up on an interview we were trying to do in the summer, and we got that out. And she was literally camped out in LA for a week prior to the strike, just hoping, fingers crossed, it'll be over so that she can get out there and promote their movie. Sure. So likewise, so many talents from so many different movies were already coiled and just ready to pounce on whatever press even remained and survived this whole strike situation. So they're feeding interviews left, right, and center for movies that are still incoming, but also movies that you might have missed on you might have missed the first time around that are coming out on VOD. Sure. You mentioned award season,
yes,
and so it does feel like it was conveniently timed that this strike wrapped up right for
just
award
before
season.
Award season. Yeah,
just before. I mean, right
in the middle of it,
when,
I guess. Yeah,
right when you can get now your actors in front of not just press but also awards voters. This last weekend, Netflix flew out almost every blogger that could be bought to LA to watch Maestro in December. You know what I mean?
Sarah Ty's where was my call, Netflix? Give me where
Sarah Ty can't be bought. That's right?
It's Ridley Scott's world. I'm just living in it.
What I'm really finding interesting is that for a little while there used to be just kind of this moment of workarounds where there's a will, there's a workaround. The Power of Women gala that Variety hosts every year. What do you know? This year they happened to invite Fantasia Barrino and and Margot Robbie and Billie Eilish and Lily Gladstone. And they're like, we're going to celebrate their philanthropic work. And it's like, is that what we're doing? Or are these people in major studio pictures and we're just trying to sort of give them whatever profile we can while they can't talk about their movies? And then suddenly you have this moment now where people can finally talk about their movies again. And what's startling to me is that, like, I'm hearing so much about Charles Melton, which is like not a name that I thought I'd be hearing about. That's the person from Riverdale who's also in May, December. Because if he had been doing the awards circuit, Rad, then we would be hearing a lot more about him earlier. But he's got like a much more shortened window in terms of like getting his name out there. So who do you think is benefiting from this timing in terms of how long the strike took up in terms of the actual award season?
I think, okay, so, I mean, as you mentioned, Charles Melton is definitely a thing. And I think even like, say, Coleman Domingo for Rusted now, because he's got, like, you know, like that movie just landed on Netflix. Now they have the opportunity to bring him out there and celebrate him. But I think the biggest winner, actually, in all of this is Killers of the Flower Moon. And I say that because it has now been the recipient of waves of dialogue that just keeps getting deeper and deeper, because it had the initial Cannes reaction. Then you had Martin Scorsese on his incredible press tour once again.
Martin Scorsese, a one-man press tour, because Leo DiCaprio could not get out there and talk about this movie. Yes,
which is why he's like a tornado on TikTok, and also give on the cover of Time magazine, talking, you know, middle finger to Marvel and the studio movies while talking up his movie. And then, and the reason why I say it has benefited is because then at the end of his press tour run, then you get this deeper conversation about like how the movie handles perspectives, the indigenous perspective versus the perspective of the Ernest Burkhart character played by Leonardo DiCaprio. So you get a deepening conversation. And right as everyone has kind of chimed in on that, the actor strike is over and Lily Gladstone enters the chat. And so once again, like, you know, so like, I think the fact that has a sustained conversation, that's benefiting a lot. So is Oppenheimer, but not necessarily, I mean, because now there's once again interest because there's a press tour, but it's still Christopher Nolan that's dominating.
And Cillian Murphy is having a terrible time again.
He always sucks in interviews, doesn't he?
But Cillian Murphy is like,
this again.
I
did my bit.
Which I was going to say, like, Cillian Murphy was like, I was in bed, comfortable. I didn't want to continue doing this, but now he's back on the press tour. What are you seeing, Hannah?
I mean, you know what? My biggest, I suppose, takeaway from this period is just like on the nature of like how we cover the industry, film, and who we cover. Yes. You know, when there was no actors or even writers, you're getting offered like casting directors, cinematographers, costume designers. And interesting enough, like I'm a freelance writer, so I pitch places, people weren't really taking them. So I kind of feel like there's this ecosystem that is not sustained by constantly championing the stars to get clicks. And I get it. It's like both what the studios give us and PRs give us, and then we as, you know, media outlets, broadcasts and stuff, who we choose to like put up and put on a pedestal. And I suppose for me, you know, the same thing that came back at the end of, you know, at the end of lockdown, you know, during that period, we're getting a lot more like independent films. You saw the Oscars that year. Films that probably wouldn't have got a looking were getting kind of nominated and getting attention. And then it suddenly comes back and it's like, all right, back to the studio jobs. So I suppose there's something that's slightly, I suppose like glasses half empty about this situation, that we could have actually aspired to do something a bit more and championed other people who, you know, as everyone knows, it doesn't take one person or one actor to make a movie. There's so many facets of it. So I guess I was kind of hoping a little bit of more like attention for like the crew.
I know. Well, that's very optimistic of you, because I think one thing we've learned from this whole debacle has been that like we like to think of film as a collaborative medium, as a medium of like artists and directors, and it's like, no, it's stars. We like to think about stars, and someone is trying to make Jacob Elordi happen, and I don't know who that person is, and I wish they would stop trying to do that. But it's fine.
The Vanity Fair cover of The Grip. Like, tell me what he's about on Killers of the Flower Moon. Sparkies. Give me their, like, Hollywood round table of being electricians. Like,
I like that world. Pretty sexy, too, right? Because you got to be, like, kind of, you know, if you actually go on a set, those are the guys.
To be fair, though, not very diverse.
That's true.
That's the problem.
That's 100% true. We got to switch gears. Because We got to talk about Matt Rife, who is a comedian, allegedly and ostensibly. He's a comedian who's getting a lot of attention. He went viral on TikTok for all these videos that he does on stage. He does all this crowd work. And then he comes out with a Netflix special. Hannah, I'm going to go to you first on this. I watched the Netflix special. He's finally made it. This is his biggest thing. And there's just so much defensiveness in the special. What did you think?
Well, can I just like to point out that I watched 10 minutes of this special, turned it off, and only watched it again because I was coming on this show and you're like, have you seen it? I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to finish it. I find it, and it's so interesting. We're talking this like show, like defensiveness, like white male defensive, like Ridley Scott, Napoleon being a defensive person, and Matt Rife. And you think someone who is a comedian would have thicker skin, especially this many years he's been in the business.
Sure.
I get it. It felt punching down to me, certainly special. And I suppose just really kind of dissing like his audience already established. I don't know, certain jokes. There's a bit where he said at the beginning where he was like, oh, just testing the waters, seeing if you're going to be fun or not.
Yeah.
That really reminds me of, when you have that person who like makes a joke and you don't find it funny. It's like, it was a joke. Yeah. And it's like, it was not.
It was.
And that's how I felt kind of throughout it. I really struggled to laugh. The blaccent is, I don't know where that's coming from.
Sure.
Like he's from Ohio, right? I find that really odd coming out of his mouth. I think there was one joke that I laughed at, and it was and it was mainly because TikTok people thought that his John Lennon tattoo was a Harry Potter tattoo. Which I just thought that was hilarious because he was so defensive about it. He was so angry about it. So yeah, I don't know. I think if you're kind of coming up and you've got this attention, again, you've got to accept you're putting your comedy into a world. It's all subjective. Not everyone's going to laugh. And I think are criticizing you because you open with a domestic violence joke, then take it on the chin, or don't do it, or be like the people that you emulate. Do you think Dave Chappelle gives
cares that much? Exactly.
Do you think Ricky Gervais cares? And that they're your idols, and yet, but then to be honest, like even as much as you agree or disagree, they are far superior comedians than Matt Rife will ever be.
This is my problem, Sarah Ty, is that, like, I watched that special. I was like, I'm waiting for a joke, just like a single joke to show up somewhere in the special. And it just did not show up. And I should say there was so much conversation when the special dropped about how, the New York Times put out this piece about how, hey, can comedians be funny and hot? Because people talk all the time about Matt Rife being attractive. And he says, people don't take him seriously because of it. Sarah Ty, what do you think of this? Is Matt Rife punished for being pretty? Is that what's happening here? I don't know. You tell me.
I think that he's being punished for being annoying and not funny. It's been a great week for me in terms of seeing people's rise and fall in a very short amount of time. Of course, like he's been working TikTok. He's been doing his specials on OnlyFans and very much directed towards women audiences. And if there's one thing that all of us should always remember, it's that women, theys, and gays own the internet. So his downfall has been just stellar to watch, in that I was introduced to this person and then heard this self-proclaimed narrative that they're too pretty to be funny, and then finally saw a picture of him wherein I was like, are we sure? If you and two other people who looked like you were walking toward me on the street, I would cross.
Sarah Ty Black.
I just think it's extremely funny to like self-narrativize this new crutch, which many people speculate has been self-done via lots of cosmetic procedures, to then be like, I'm too pretty, especially when like a hallmark of comedy is like authenticity and integrity. And especially when we live in a world where like beautiful people like James Marsden are extremely funny. It's like, do you think this has not happened before? Do you think you're the first person to like approach conventional attractiveness and be funny? Purportedly be funny?
Yeah. But can I just say, and we have like 30 seconds left, Sarah Ty, but like, and I'll put this to you, but there is something about watching the special where he's like actually trying to say, I don't think I want all these women fans anymore. Or like he's kind of like, they got me to this place. And then there's almost like a pushback of being like, this feels like a burden to me that these are the only fans that end up showing up. What did you make of that? Of him trying to be like, they got me here, but I'm not really sure that I'm happy that they're the only ones I have.
I think that is kind of the most interesting non-jokey part of it, is to see the way in which he's painted himself into a corner in terms of the way that he weaponized desirability and now is like, oh, this isn't actually meeting my expectations. And now maybe men who are my true fan base resent me, which is not true. You're just not funny. It's fascinating to watch, especially for like a white person and a white man, especially kind of like navigate this quote unquote newfound desirability and be like, oh, this is not all that I was promised.
Can I throw in Bo Burnham? Can I just say?
Yeah,
Bo
like
Burnham,
10 seconds.
Desirable.
Literally.
Bo Burnham got a lot of female attention. What did he do? He made 8th grade. Matt Rife gets a lot of female attention. What does he do? Domestic violence Jones and punches down on his female fans. So.
Oof. What a perfect place to leave it. Okay, before we go, we're just going to wrap up all this chaos by hearing a film or a TV show or maybe some music. You know, something that didn't get the promotion it deserved because of the strike. I want each of you to pick something. What do you think people should know about? Sarah Ty, 30 seconds to you.
Something that I would have loved to see promotion for, which is not something I ever say, would have been Dix the Musical. I haven't even seen it. I just think the cast has so much potential, and I would have loved to see all the little sound bites. Like Megan Mullally and Megan Thee Stallion together. What would that have been?
Dix the Musical was one of the most chaotic movies of the year, so I would have loved to see that press run also. Rad Simon Pillay, what do you want to recommend?
I'm just going to shout out the movie that I think actually did suffer the most without the promotions, which is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, like the animated movie, because it was actually so much fun. As a movie that wants to be Into the Spider-Verse but can't quite get there, it's a good effort. And the fact that it didn't have Seth Rogen and all those guys promoting it, it just seemed like no one even noticed.
I totally agree, and I loved that movie. Like I came out of that, I was like, I'm full of delight because of this movie. Hannah Flint, take us home.
Okay, Murder at the End of the World. I'm obsessed with Britt Marling and Zal Batman Bleach and like the OA getting cancelled.
Yes.
It hurt my feelings for several
R.I.P.
weeks.
Yes.
But I love murder sort of mystery. I love the way that it's panning out. It's got a few episodes out now, but they didn't do much promotion for it. And Emma Corrin, Harris Dickinson, team.
I'm glad that you're carrying water for that. That's a perfect thing to sort of leave us and go into this weekend with. In the meantime, I got to say thank you again. Hannah Flint, Sarah Ty Black, Rad Simon Pillay. You guys are the best. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Of course. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This has always been a chaotic Commotion group chat. I'm happy that you're here. Let's do this again next week.